to answer all of that. We will get into the strategies. Where does India lacking? What do we need? What strategies? What can attract more students, more faculties to India? But before we get into deeper into strategies and what functions to be needed, what facilities, or where is India lacking, I want to begin with a very sharp question. Is this really needed? India to be publicized in a manner where we look alike as a global attraction? Is this needed? Also, the larger question that everybody keeps sitting with is why Indian students go abroad to study. This is a very, very common question among newer generation, older generation. Why do students go out to study? What is the gap in India? These are the questions to be answered today, not just discussed. We will get the answers also. But what do you think? How can India become a magnet? How can India become an attraction? Is this really needed? Where are we lacking? Anybody can start.
So you asked a fantastic question which said, does India need to be global? Is it needed that students from outside come to India? Well, I went out. I studied at IIT Delhi in India, but I went to do my MBA at Wharton at University of Pennsylvania in US. So if you look at any developed economy, right, whether it's US or you look at the hot spots like Singapore, Dubai, London, you would notice one thing, that all these cities are very multinational and multicultural. So to be part of a global economy and to shine in that global economy, you need to represent all the diverse perspectives and the diverse needs of those regions. And hence, I think it's very, very important that you have representation from those nations. So I think our cities, whether it's Delhi, whether it's Bangalore, whether it's Mumbai or Hyderabad now, they will have to be multinational. Without that, you will just have this one perspective of Indian nationals, and how would you rule the world when you don't have representation from there?
I can 100% agree with you that we prevail in domestic excellence, but we need to build with global aspirations also, be it students, universities, facilities, faculties, anybody, anything. I take your point. Now, coming to you, Dr. Raina, do you really think that India is still lacking over the many, many decades? Are we still far making a mark in global landscape?
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I would like to first start with your statement where you said that when students go out, they easily find their job. But the real story is absolutely different. We have seen many times when students go out, whether any part of the world, and many times they come back to the country, they're not able to find a job there. They have done their studies out here and they come back here in India for the job. So it's not, the fact is not that wherever they go and they are easily able to find job for themselves. That's one. Second is, see, when we talk about Indian education, somewhere or the other, the branding is missing. We never went to that international level and branded India as a country, where there could be a lot of learning, maybe, there could be a good exposure. Today the whole world is looking at India, right? In terms of the growth we have and in terms of whatever we are doing. But when it comes to management education, there we lacked. Some way or the other, we didn't promote ourselves as a place for management education. That's one. Third is, unless and until we do not focus on two things. One is the quality of teaching and second is quality of research. Unfortunately, today there are all, business leaders sitting out here, management education leaders sitting out here. Today the race for any faculty is how many publications, not what kind of publication. Like when we talk about, selection boards and all that, they also talked about how many research papers have been published, but they never they definitely look at the quality, but not in terms of, maybe there could be one paper which could be published in Harvard and there could be another candidate who has 7 papers but at different this thing. It's not being seen differently. So we need a lot of improvement in terms of quality of research, how it is being seen, and at the same time, quality of teaching.
Interesting, very pertinent point. Now coming to you, Dr. Mathur, tell me what do you think? We will 100% get into strategies part, what to be done and what's required. in terms of institutions building and to be evolving here on. But before that, tell me, where are we lacking?
I think apart from the other points which have been covered, one is on the faculty. So when we talk about diversity in the international arena, you have faculty from all across the world, the best man doing the job there. Sadly, ironically, in India, when we get international faculty, it's more of guest faculty. Colloquially, it's more of tourism rather than education. So we call it academic tourism rather than integration of academics. So when we get international faculty, it's only for part of a course, maybe 4 or 5 lectures, that's what we're dealing with. One key principle would be to get the international faculty completely integrated into stackable credits, so that there's a complete integration and assimilation of the program and of the courses. Secondly, your first question on why do students they go abroad, that's the moot point. Or are we lacking somewhere tremendously? See, homegrown problems have homemade solutions. We are a petri dish of all kinds of issues, 1.4 billion people there. We are teaching in management schools how to deal with limitations. Unlike West, which primarily deals with more of surpluses. So here we have a large opportunity to deal in this crisis mode and to get the best of managers out of the schools, provided we do things right, and that's what we are trying to do now.
Thank you so much. Pranav, I'm coming to you for answers to all of these questions. We now so far understood where the gaps, where do we see the gaps, but tell me, what can be some of the institutional reforms, or what can be some of the changes in the curricula we look in 2025? What would you advise or suggest in terms of strategy change?
It's such a long answer, I had to take my mask out for that, otherwise it would take a while. So, listening to what all the panelists said, there are primarily 2 diagnoses if you look at most of the programs in India, right, where we lack. And we don't lack because the market demanded it, we lacked because we never needed it in the past. If you looked at the Indian MBA space, we didn't really need to globalize it until today. It was pretty good, it was for building jobs in the country, and it did a great job. One of the 2 big things that we need to focus on, the 2 problems that we see, is that are Indian MBAs truly global? I don't think so. Right now, they're just programs with maybe an immersion slapped on them, or term exchange or something like that. Second thing, like everyone said over here, do we really attract faculty from abroad to come into this country? Do we give them the research framework? Do we give them the ability to actually thrive here? And there are a few solutions in this area, something that institutions are trying. We at JAXOM most definitely are trying with some of our programs. The first one is you really need to build programs with international partners. Unlike adding a term, you actually co-develop a program with, let's say, a Kedge Business School or someone in the US, and take everything from the courseware all the way to the way the program is delivered with the partner. So that kind of brings in an international perspective into the program, at the same time also brings the Indian context into it. Second, and something that's more important, is does the program have a global outcome? So a way that institutions can do this is signal various job roles across various geographies, talking about international mobility that students have had across the program, etc., etc. The third thing, I think what everyone's talked about is faculty and research as levers in this program. As of today, a lot of the faculty that comes to India is visiting. They teach 4 or 5 sessions, then they exit from the class. They aren't really settling their roots over here. And one of the major things that we kind of have to do to bring international faculty is to design research themes that make them stick in the country. 2 or 3 areas that, let's say, someone from the US or Europe would want to come into India and stay for a multi-year research-long contract, so they can also pass on that learning to the students. Then we've got the traditional stuff. We've got the international accreditations. Nishit is here. Everyone's here. You can get EFMD, AACSP to signal across, saying that we are someone that's self-regulated and follows along those lines. And finally, the biggest question where we all struggle with international programs is, do we attract international students? Now, whether we like it or not in India, India is not a destination that people come to build a career in from outside. And not because we're a bad place, but it's because we've got purchase power parity, they've got better salary options there, it's a harder
That's a bold
ecosystem to
statement.
get in.
That can make a headline also.
But we should play that to our advantage. We should actually sell India as a destination where people can develop managers into a new type of manager that works in a constantly changing environment where restrictions are very different, the target group and consumers are very different. And I think that is what would really bring international students in. Not the idea of, oh, you can become a consultant in BCG. Not really. You can do that in San Francisco too. But can you learn what it's like to be in a fast-growing country where everything is changing, infrastructure is changing? I think that's a good lever to pull. But those are my
I think,
5
Pranav,
points on
this is a very, very strong point. I'm coming to you, Swati. I will also bring you in. Because India has a very strong ground right now when it comes to entrepreneurship. We talk about startups, we talk about profitable big companies that started maybe 10 years ago that has become huge companies doing IPOs, going public. We have a strong ground to showcase how entrepreneurship is now being nourished in India. In addition to that, your insight on this, and also in addition to that, what are some of the things that you pick up from international institutions that we can kind of replicate or do it in Indian style?
So one of the things, and I think I resonate with what Pranav said, that when students are looking to come to India, right, even for short, let's say, exchange programs, there is this a little bit of resistance, whether it's safe, right, whether I'll be okay, you know, how will I manage things, because it's not a country that's very known to them if they're not related to India at all. And at Masters Union, what we have tried to build is replicate what some of these Ivy League schools do. So when I was at Wharton, we used to have these global immersion programs, which would be 10-day trips to different countries, right? So let's say a country like China, I would not visit on my own, right? Or a country like South Korea, I wouldn't visit on my own, but these are great countries that you need to go to understand their economies and the businesses and the way they've built. So there was a 10-day trip that took me to South Korea, and we pretty much went to biggest of the companies in South Korea, right? And biggest of the companies in China. And that, as an MBA student, for me, took out the fear of, can I go on in these countries? Can I do business in these countries? And that is what we are replicating at Masters Union, where we are saying that, hey, can we create this 10-day trip for anybody? And we take full responsibility of that trip. We get the students to start from Delhi and help them understand the Gurgaon MNC ecosystem, plus at the same time help them understand the old Delhi family business ecosystem. Then from there, take them to Bombay, help them get into the financial services industry of India, give them a little bit of GRIMS, take them to NSE, and then finally end that in Bangalore and show them what the unicorn startups of India look like. And once somebody goes through that 10-day process, right, it's a short commitment, easy to do, full responsibilities and safety taken care of, then they start to open up. Then they start to see India not from the lens of the media or what their country is saying, but from their actual experiences that, hey, this is a developed country that I really need to, full of opportunities that I really can build my career in. So I think we as institutes need to start with those short excursions, short immersions, and then convert that to an exchange and then to probably a full-time program.
Good actionable insight. Your insights on how we can evolve from here on, and also what can we pick up from international institutions that can attract more students?
Yeah, first of all, I have a slightly different perspective when we talk
I'm
about...
always up for contradictory views. That can be positive also, but I'm always up for contradictory views on the panel.
Yeah, when we talk about, global MBA, nowadays there's a lot of discussions wherever you go in conclaves, summits, forums, wherever. They say, how do we make this Indian MBA as a global MBA, right? And every time the point is that how do we attract international faculty to come down to India and teach, not in terms of short term, maybe it could be probably in terms of long-term assignments and all that. But how many international faculties you can actually bring? It's a 2-year program. How many international faculty? Maybe 10, 12? Why don't we think of grooming faculty in India itself and take them at an international standard, And I think the responsibility of that is with the institutional leaders, right? They need to come forward. They need to see that how do I groom my faculty, you know, so that they are very close in competition with the international faculty. I think that's one which need to be taken care of. And when you go to, you know, a lot of B schools and all that, you talk about the faculty timings and all that. And sometimes you get very shocked to know that there is 16 hours teaching, 18 hours teaching, 20 hours teaching in a week for a faculty. Now, if you give too much of workload to a faculty, you definitely cannot groom that faculty. Like, for example, at IBS, we have a policy that we cannot give them more than 7 hours in a week for a faculty, and remaining time we give them in terms of grooming themselves, self-learning, grooming, and at the same time, a lot of other FDPs and all that we take up. So that's one. Second, see, today we are talking about what is that something need to be done differently. I believe that case studies is something which we need to focus on. And let me talk about, you know, long time before, some 20, 25 years before, when there was case studies and all, most of the B schools used to bring cases from Harvard, put that in the class and teach through Harvard cases. But over a period of time, we realized that, you know, you can't teach a Harvard case in an Indian situation, right? Where the solution, everything is different. So at that point in time, thanks to Professor Yashasvi, he took up a stand and he said, why don't we develop the cases, Indian cases, and let's bring that to the classroom. And today, let me say that ICFAI has the highest repository after Harvard in terms of case development.
Wonderful.
So I mean, institutions need to come forward. They need to create this kind of a legacy in terms of creating institutions in India of international standard. And I think slowly, slowly we'll be able to attract students for this destination.
Such examples of what institutions have been doing, masters unions, what they have been doing. Now, my point here is to you, Dr. Mathur. We know that institutions are doing good work. They've been trying different initiatives in terms of going up, developing further. But do we really lack a space of advertising Indian MBA at a global level? Do you see a scope there?
Well, let the action take care of itself. I mean, you don't have to brand it. The brand will come automatically once you do the things right. For example...
When?
Only a mystic will be able to tell you that.
But 10 years, 20 years, 50, 100 years?
Timelines I cannot, but what comes to my mind is something like this, that it's a very unique phenomenon which has come up. Industry is crying aloud, we do not have skilled manpower. Universities and in these schools are saying that while we are getting all the graduates to you, so there's always a gap between the knowing and the doing. So this gap can be perhaps be bridged by what we call the co-designing and co-delivering the curriculum. Co-designing internationally, co-designing with industry. So when you tie up with internationally and also with industry, perhaps this knowing-doing gap will be bridged, and then it will come a brand on its own. So when we thought that, when do you actually tie up with the industry? Ironically, till now, hitherto, what we were doing, we were touching industry contacts, CHROs, only at the time of internships and placements. So loosely, one ferry, one boat used to travel between academics and university, industry, only during these two times. We said, let's have a all-weather bridge all the time. So right from designing of curriculum till final placements, industry should be constantly in touch with you. So you design the curriculum, you co-deliver, you give on internship, and then you do the placements. So it's one continuum which exists. So perhaps these initiatives which are more aligned to job readiness and less on over-compliance on things. Chasing numbers, how many teaching hours, kitne research paper, what is your scopus, what is your impact factor, etc. I don't think that will have any meaning in creating a brand, rather than proof of pudding lies in its eating. So let's do what is required within the industry, and then a brand will emerge on its own.
I agree with this, but this is a very old school traditional way to go by, and I think for the longest time in India, I mean, our education system and what we see today in terms of entrepreneurship landscape is the result of what has been consistent in terms of quality delivering. Very well said, Dr. Mathur. I'm coming to you, Pranav. You have something to say interesting. Go on.
Hello. Actually, this is one of my favorite topics. Like, how do you make India the global destination, and how do you brand India? You see, almost every like, I went to Stanford, I did my undergrad over there. One of the larger appeals of going to Stanford was actually America, the American dream, going there, Silicon Valley, building, etc., etc. And I was thinking about this last night, that if you were to attract, let's say, a management student to India, what is that thing you sell to them about India? And it's very counterintuitive, but it's actually the complexity of India. So you sell to someone that, India is a place where you have very ambiguous management, right? People are all over the place. There's a huge problem of scale. There are multiple target groups of customers and profiles that range all the way from people at the poverty line to ultra-rich. There are supply chain problems, infrastructure problems, etc., etc. And you kind of create that as a destination for people to come and say, well, you don't get this anywhere on this planet. This is the only place where you can train and learn about this. Apart from that, India is also unique when you look at the kind of entrepreneurial density we have as a country, the amount of family businesses here, the problems they face. Masters Union is doing a family business program. So many people do it, right? It's such an interesting space to be in. You can't replicate this in any other country in the world. Third, look at our digital infrastructure. 1.4 billion people are powered on this digital infrastructure. The kind of problems we face, the scale of those problems, apart from China and maybe Africa, and Africa is a little behind us in this space, and China is walled. This is the only country where someone can learn to solve those problems. And lastly, we are affordable. So anybody who comes from, let's say, the US or Europe, or just about any country into India, the ROI, the outcome that they generate from this place at the cost of our education is phenomenal. And if we as management schools are able to portray this to the international world alongside our accreditations and all the other good work we're doing, I don't see why people won't come to us. I mean, it's a movement that we start now.
I think we're lacking on advertising. We need to kind of go all out to tell everybody that India is a big picture golden bird right now. In the last 5 minutes, I will want to come to each one of you and talk about the positives. What are some of the India's compelling advantages that students and faculties can look at? Of course, in addition to what Pranav has already said.
Of course, and I think, because I have done my MBA abroad, I completely, again, agree with you. I think you have that Stanford perspective as well, is that people are really, really excited about the complexity of India. The word jugaad, right? Ideally in MBA schools, you will learn about management very in a structured way. But then Harvard has made case studies out of our way of doing jugaad. So those are the positives. But I think the biggest positive today, if I were to talk about, is that India is the only shining star in the geopolitical situation that is existing, fortunately or unfortunately, today. When you look at the West, with the new president coming in, things for non-Americans are probably not looking that great, right? Europe has its own issues with the war that's going on. And again, China, people are trying to build that +1 situation. So India has somehow become the center of a lot of opportunities. MNCs are setting up their global centers in India. You know, this market is expected to be around $3 billion opportunity, with approximately 5 million jobs to be created. So somehow the stars are aligned. And I think now we have to sell that story that what happened to China in 1990s is going to happen to us in the next 2 decades. So this is where the economy will be created. This is where the jobs will be created. And if somebody is really looking for those opportunities, whether these are MNCs or individuals, then that's India.
See, I think I agree with her. There are a lot of opportunities right now which in India we have. Like the way the GCC is being set up in India, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for these MBA students to get jobs in GCC. The way India is growing, and at the same time today, you know, India is at the central place. I mean, everybody is eyeing the kind of middle class we have, the kind of growth we see. A lot of companies today are coming up in India and launching their products and wanted to, you know, multifold their businesses and all that. So I mean, some way or the other, as we said in the past also, there's somewhere that branding is missing somewhere, where we did not brand ourselves in terms of, you know, what we can give to these MBA aspirants and all that. And second part is we need to do some, you know, a little bit of perceptual change in terms of student understanding also. I mean, when students do come today to Indian B schools and all that, I think the only question is, what is going to be the ROI? And unfortunately, the ROI calculation is what is the fee I'm paying and what is I am going to earn in this first year. But they forget it that ROI can never be for 1 year. It is for the number of years for which you work for, right? See, today my MBA can be my last qualification. I'm going to work for next 30, 40 years. Now you tend to calculate it only on the basis. But when you have these students going to, the abroad or maybe any part of the world and all that, I don't think they look at that ROI. They look at more in terms of the kind of learning we have, the kind of exposure we have. So somewhat or the other, we need to talk to the students also that, my dear, this is not the definition of ROI. We need to think it and look at it from a different perspective altogether. This is especially for the students who are sitting out here.
Let's see if AI can come in as their help to calculate that particular ROI in different geographies.
Perhaps, yes. See, the good thing about the country and which is missing in the West largely now is the Aadhaar, the UPI, which is largest across the globe. This can be a crucible for a lot of experiments. And whereas the West teaches us about how to manage abundance, in this system of lot of rapid change, in this system of lot of constraints, restrictions, policy flux, I think a lot of learnings can happen. And going by what we just discussed about, that a lot of opportunities exist, rising middle class, etc., all the major consumers in the world are here. I think it was going to be quite a change and quite exciting to know that all these UPIs, etc., and the new technology inputs, including AI, largest consumers in the world of AI, largest consumers of the world, and also the inputs to all the AI engines and Gen AIs. I think this is going to be really exciting if we do it right.
Before we actually close, just one more question. We have already talked on many points that can attract many students, but do we really have to realign or resystemize our core system, core institutions in order to attract or collaborate to bring in more faculties?
I think there are a lot of things which need to be jointly. I mean, joint curriculum, joint internship. I was talking one day to one of the startup, they're helping, in fact, Indian students to get internships in an online mode where they're attaching them to, international professors and helping them to do research and all that. So that can be a very good initiative in terms of student being in India and finally working under some international professor and doing that as an internship. I mean, there need to be a lot of things, which goes, in a manner which can be joined. Another last point which I would like to make is that there are a lot of role which need to be from the regulator side also. I mean, today regulators are requested that if little more freedom could be given in terms of syllabus being moving. See, we've been facing, ICFAI is a different story altogether, but other institutions, when you talk to the leaders and all that, the biggest problem today is that they're not able to revise syllabus, they're not able to revise curriculum and all that, because there's a lot of things which comes under this. So, I mean, if there could be given some freedom, to those institutions where the syllabus could be moving and can be contemporary in nature, have a freedom of launching new courses, probably depends upon the kind of demand there in the market, that will help a long way.
Swati, before we close, we discussed that India has Indian problems and that will only have Indian solutions to it. By this manner, can we say a graduate or a 20-year-old student should not be needed to go out and have exposure to solve Indian problems?
Absolutely, right? And I always tell our students, so we have around 750 undergrads on the campus, and usually parents have this expectation that undergrad India se kar lete hain, postgrad bahar se kar lenge, right? And I keep telling the parents and the students that, hey, if you go to a good quality institute in India, which can make sure that the global exposure is being given, and I'll tell you how we do that at Masters Union. You don't have to go to a postgrad just to get your MBA, right? And I'll tell you an example. So at Masters Union, we have 750 students, undergrads on the campus. Now they have this aspiration of going global because of the exposure. The way we do it is, again, establishing those short excursions, as I said. So I give you an example of the incoming India trips. every 6 months, we are organizing an outgoing trip. So the first one was to Japan, where we took our students to Japan, took them to a Nissan manufacturing plant, right? Took them to a Daikin research center. Now these are the biggest of the Japanese companies. And there, the students learned about the Japan economy, right? Which they could have probably done if they had gone to a Stanford or a Wharton as well. Now the second is then we took them to Europe. They went to United Nations, they went to Paris, learned about the ecosystem there. The third one was to Singapore, more on the financial and the Asia economy as a hub. And the fourth one was for Middle East, and we keep doing this. That's one way. Second, we have done, as ma'am was saying, joint collaborations, right? Short courses. So there are tie-ups where you could go to a abroad university where for 4 weeks, you study on, let's say, the business ecosystem of that geography. And most of the institutes have that, where they can organize these 4-week courses for your students, right? So indulge in those kind of partnerships. And then summer schools. Your biggest of the biggest brands like Harvard and others, they have these summer schools that students can go to, right? So we make sure that students are getting enough exposure while they are here, so that by the time they graduate, they don't feel like, oh, we don't have the global exposure. They've had enough global exposure. Plus, if you're bringing students from outside to the campus, then in the classroom also they're meeting other nationalities. So that's our way of giving global exposure to the students.
Interesting. This is interesting. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. This is interesting. Not interesting? Thank you so much. But this is interesting, but let's stop here. This can create FOMO for many, many, many graduates or undergraduates. But on this point, I really, really want to bring in that we are on the correct path. In about 5-10 years, we will see that India's image at a global landscape that we are yet to see in a big way. And in terms of the timeline, I think as soon as we touch the developed nation mark, we will see that happen very, very soon, or maybe earlier than that. Nobody can discuss or decide for this. But on this note, thank you so much, panelists, for making time for this and for a very, very insightful discussion. Can we have a huge round of applause for everybody?